Have you ever prepared for a vacation or a trip of some kind? You're getting ready to go, and as you were driving away, you had that eerie feeling that maybe you forgot something. Okay, good. It's not just me. So, yeah, you're driving away, and you're just quiet. Everybody's quiet. Maybe the kids aren't quiet, but you're quiet. Your spouse is quiet. You're just driving down the road, and do you feel like we forgot something? Yes, I do. What is it? I forgot. I don't know what it is. So it gives you that eerie feeling right away that you've left something behind, you forgot something. It could be toiletries, it could be pajamas, it could be instructions of some kind, but you don't know what it is. Yeah, you don't know what it is at all. You just know you've left something behind, and it really doesn't matter what it was. It doesn't matter what it is at all. It's if you feel like something's missing, it bugs you until you figure it out. And it's not until you're way down the road that you realize the kids aren't even in the vehicle. But you know that was a nagging feeling the whole time. Like, what are we forgetting? What have we missed? And like, we've got to go back. Why? The kids. We have to go back. Yes, we do have to go back. They were getting their shoes on, we forgot about it, we drove away, whatever the case may be. But we forgot something, and it bugs you until you figure out what it was. When we realize that we're lacking something, it becomes overwhelming to us. Something's missing, and we have that feeling that something is missing. We know everything's not right. We're missing something. The problem is that there are so many things lacking in life that we haven't even noticed yet. They are missing and we haven't noticed them, and there are so many things that we think we're lacking, but we're not actually lacking at all. We get this thing messed up so often. I'm missing out on this and this and this, and you're really not. Or you think, I got everything going on, and no, you're lacking something. We mess it up in both directions. I want to look again at one of the most popular parables that Jesus gave in his ministry. The Good Samaritan is known around the world as an example of love. Most people know the story of the Good Samaritan. A lot of movies are based on this idea itself. Even if you've never been in church, you understand the concept of the Good Samaritan. But I want to look at it from a different perspective today. It's a small parable, but it really packs a punch in the area of application. You read this one parable, like, what am I supposed to learn? Well, always ask that, because it goes deep. It goes really deep. You can learn so much from this parable. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. Luke chapter 10 and verse 30. Then Jesus answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. So Jesus doesn't start this story with a once upon a time. He doesn't really ease us into the story at all. It just kind of slaps us. The first thing we find out is that the wickedness of humanity fell on an innocent man. The guy's just traveling and he's attacked. That's how Jesus starts the story. So this guy was walking, and they beat him up and left him half dead, took his clothes and left him half dead. And like, okay, you have my attention. That's a really rough way to start a story, but we're already in, so let's go ahead and keep going. He doesn't start, well, one day there was he just slaps you with it. Yeah, the wickedness of humanity comes in, beats up this guy, takes his clothing and leaves him half dead. This guy's just traveling when he's attacked. The thieves beat him up and they take his clothes, leaving him humiliated and broken on the side of the road. That's how the story starts. This seems to be the crime in the story. And a lot of times when we read the story of the Good Samaritan, we see this as the crime in the story. But the crime is yet to come. Yes, this is a crime, but this isn't the one that Jesus is talking about. This is the crime that the story starts out with, but this isn't the crime that Jesus is focused on. This is just the event where the crime took place. Jesus isn't focusing the story on the man who's hurt. That's not the focus of the story. He turns the story to the ones who are not hurt. That's his focus. Jesus introduces us to the next character in the story, and this one would have had a tendency to take the listener by surprise. This first character that Jesus brings in, you got the guy that's hurt. We got that character. That's his part in the whole story. He's beat up. He's not going to contribute to the story anymore. That's his part. Now he introduces us to the first character into the story, and the Jewish listeners, as they're listening to his story, this one would shock them a little bit. Look at verse 31. Now by chance a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. The priest is walking down the same path when he sees a broken man in need. The priest. Now, a lot of times when we think of a priest, we put it in a Catholicism picture. That's not what's going on here. We have a Jewish priest, a rabbi, that's coming down the road, and he sees this man broken. He's laying there humiliated, beat up. They left him for dead, and the priest walks by and notices him. A lot of speculation has been given for why the priest doesn't stop and help. I've heard sermons where there's a little bit of justification, I guess, they throw at this priest to try to explain why he didn't stop and help. Some people say that he thought the man was dead and he didn't want to touch something unclean and break Jewish law. Okay, maybe you've heard of that in a sermon. Like, okay, so he's dead. I don't want to touch him because according to Jewish law, I'm not supposed to touch anything dead, anything unclean, so I'm going to go ahead and just avoid him. A lot of people throw that out as a possibility of why this guy didn't help him. Some have even said that he was on his way to a religious ceremony of some kind, so he could not stop. There was a festival, there was a ceremony. He had to be there because he's the priest, so there's no time. He really can't stop and help this guy. But Jesus doesn't give us any of those details. People throw these into the story like, well, maybe, and maybe not. Jesus doesn't give us any of these details at all. He just says that he was a priest and he didn't address the needs of this man. That's all Jesus says. He just passed by on the other side. A priest was someone who was supposed to be reflecting God to others. That was the idea. That's the job of the priest. You're supposed to be reflecting the character of God. That's your job. That's what you do. He was a man who people knew associated with God. So when you see a priest, you automatically think this is a godly man, or at least a religious man. So he knows of God. He's supposed to be able to give me answers about God. It's his job. So you already know that he's supposed to be reflecting God. If people wanted to learn something about the character of God, this was the guy that you want to go see. This is because he's the one studying the character of God. The stranger was definitely experiencing a deficiency. The man on the side of the road, he's definitely experiencing a deficiency. He's lost a lot here. He was naked, he was hurting, he was alone, and he needed somebody to care for him. That's just the reality. Of all people, the priest should have shown him the character of God in this situation. He should have shown him the character of God. His job was to reflect God's character, and he just passed by. He just passed by. Then Jesus introduces us to the next character. He just opens it up, and he just drops that. Well, this is what the priest did. He saw him. Yep, he sees him, and he walked by. What else about the priest? That's all I got to say about the priest. That's what he did. You can judge or whatever you're going to do now, but that's all I'm going to tell you about the priest. That's what he did. Then he moves on to the next character. Look at verse 32. Likewise, a Levite, when he arrived at the place, came and looked and passed by on the other side. So here we go again. The Levites were a unique people. When the land of Israel was divided among the tribes of Israel, the tribe of Levi didn't receive anything. Every tribe of Israel gets something. The tribe of Dan, you get this area of land. The tribe of, Gad, you get this. The tribe of Asher, you get this. And the Levites are like, come on, bring it on, bring it on. What do we get? Where's our land? And you guys get nothing. Like, perfect. We get nothing. They don't get anything. It was the tribe that the priest actually came from. The tribe of Levi is the tribe that the priest would come from. This tribe was devoted to the needs of the people through ministry. That was their job. You minister to the people. These other tribes, that's not necessarily their job, but your job is to minister to the people. That's the tribe of Levi. The other tribes would give a tenth of what they had to help take care of these people. So when you hear about the concept of tithing in the Bible, which is it's an Old Testament law, but you have the concept of tithing, the other tribes were supposed to give 10% of what they had to take care of the Levi tribe. Why? because they get nothing. That you don't have land, you don't have crops, you don't have anything. This tribe doesn't get anything. Look at what God told this tribe in Numbers chapter 18 and verse 20. Then the Lord said to Aaron, "You shall have no inheritance in their land, nor shall you have any portion among them. I am your portion and your inheritance among the children of Israel." What's our job? You get nothing. Is it something we said? Why do we get nothing? I am your portion and your inheritance. You're going to be the priests that point to the character of God. And I need you to learn something as a tribe. The Levites understood that God was going to take care of them. We need to trust God to take care of us because we got nothing. We can't do this on our own. God's going to take care of us. They trusted that God was going to provide for them, but they also had to trust that God was going to take care of the other tribes as well. God's going to have to bless those other tribes as well. Since the other tribes were told to give a portion of their blessings to the Levites were going to have to trust that God was going to give them a portion that they could give of. They're like, hey, God's not blessing us. That's not good for us. I really want God to bless you. Because if God doesn't bless you, I've got a situation. Because I don't have crops of my own or anything. God says that I'm supposed to rely on your faithfulness to Him with the blessings that He gives you. That's our position. The Lord is our inheritance. The Lord is our portion. So we have to rely on you being faithful to Him. That's our job. We're dependent on God. That was what we got. You guys got land and crops and stuff for your inheritance. What did we get? We got dependency. That's what we got. We have to depend on God. And we learn that works. You can trust in God, and that's why we can share the character of God with you, because we're living it. We're living it. The Levites were people who understood the need for others. The other tribes, a lot of times they were self-sufficient. They had it going on. They have crops, and anything that God blesses them with, they somehow feel entitled to it. The Levites didn't have to experience that. They understood the need for other people. They understood that. They lived their lives at the mercy of another person's obedience to God. I'm trusting you to be faithful to Him, because if you're faithful to Him, then He's providing for me through your faithfulness. That's how it works for us. So maybe the priest didn't get the point, but the Levite should have understood this for sure when he saw a man laying on the side of the road, left for dead. The Levite should have understood we have a need for other people. So why didn't he stop? What's going on with this guy? But Jesus says the Levite passed by also. There is something seriously off about this parable. Just looking at the situation, your first question is why, and then your second question is why. Why would anybody do this? Especially those two types of people, the priest and the Levite. It's almost as if these men didn't even recognize the needs of the wounded man. Did you notice he was wounded? Oh, I missed that part. No, they didn't miss that. They understood this. But it almost seems like they didn't even notice it. But we know they did. The man has needs in so many areas. The third man in the parable responds differently though. We know the story of the Good Samaritan. Here comes the Samaritan. We're all familiar with this parable. The first two men were men of renown. They had prominence in society. We know them. They're the priests and the Levites. They've got a reputation. We know who they are. They point to God. They show us the character of God. The third guy, well, he's just a Samaritan. He's just a Samaritan. Look at Luke chapter 10 and verse 33. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. This guy is looked down on because he's a Samaritan. The Jews did not like the Samaritans. Both the priest and the Levite would have passed this guy for sure. If we saw a Samaritan laying on the side of the road, yeah, we would have walked by him definitely, because we look down on the Samaritans, because they're not of the pure Jewish line anymore. They took wives from other nations, and they've messed things up. They messed things up because now it's not a pure bloodline anymore. See, they took people from other nations and brought it in, so we don't like the Samaritans. So the Jews, they're done with the Samaritans. So they would have passed this guy up. The Jews saw the Samaritans as dogs, and a lot of times they said that. So they really weren't nice about the Samaritans. They didn't like them at all. What they didn't realize was how much they had in common with each other. The priest, the Levite, and the Samaritan have a lot in common with each other. And before I tell you what they had in common, I want to point out a few details about this Samaritan. It says that he was on a journey. Don't miss this. It says he's on a journey. The other two guys were just walking by. So when you look back at the parable, you can see these two guys were just passing by. But it says that the Samaritan was on a journey. This guy is traveling somewhere. He has an agenda. He's on a journey when he notices this guy. His whole schedule gets interrupted when he finds him. Whatever he's doing, whatever journey he's on, wherever he's going for whatever purpose it is, stops when he notices the guy on the side of the road. Look at verse 34. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. And he set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. Everything stops when he notices the guy on the side of the road. Everything stops. Wherever the Samaritan was going has been moved to the back burner. What I was doing today is now, it's paused. I'm moving it to the back burner. His money and his possessions were now on the table to be offered to this stranger. That's kind of a big deal. My money, my possessions, everything I have, including my time, is now on the table, and it's up for grabs for that guy right there. He needs help. It says he bandages him up. He uses his own supplies to doctor his wounds. He puts him on his own donkey or his own horse, whatever the animal that he had with him was. And he rents a room to take care of the guy. The Samaritan understands the importance of others. Kind of what the Levite should have had nailed down already. The Samaritan has that. He goes, this guy needs help. This guy has a need for somebody else to come into his life and be a blessing to him. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. He could have just used his things and his time for himself. But the Samaritan didn't live for himself. You can tell that by the character of man that he was. He doesn't just live for himself. All those things he could have used for himself. But he says, nope, they are now going to be offered to this guy. When I said that his schedule got moved to the back burner, that's exactly what happened. Look at the next verse, verse 35. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come again, I will repay you. He ends up caring for this man until the next day. So remember, he doesn't just drop him off and say, hey, good luck to you. This guy needs your help. And then he continues on his journey. No, it says the next day. So that day's blown for whatever he was going to do. He spends time with this guy the rest of that day into the next day, taking care of his needs. He pays for the room, and he gives the innkeeper some extra money for additional care. And then he promises to come back and reimburse him for anything it costs more than he gave him. Here's the money I'm giving you, and if it ends up costing more than that, when I come back, I'll reimburse you. This man recognized that there were needs in this world which far exceed his own. When you look at the Samaritan, you're like, I like that guy. Well, how much do you like that guy? You want a friend like that? Or you want to be a friend like that? No, how much do you like that guy? Because, a lot of kids, when they see a superhero on TV, they're like, I like him, I like him. What they're saying is, I would like to be like them. Not that I just would hope that guy was in my life, but no, I want to be that. So how much do you like the Good Samaritan? We all like him, but how much? Do you like him as a friend, or would you want to be that friend? His journey was postponed. His hard-earned money was used for somebody else. He earned that money. He did the work for that money. This guy didn't do anything for that money. That was his money. His time was spent on something other than what he had planned for. This guy stops his journey altogether. So what was the difference between the other two men and this Samaritan? It all came down to recognizing the deficiencies. This is what I want us to focus on. They recognize it. The Good Samaritan recognized the deficiencies, and I don't mean the deficiencies of the man who was robbed. I want to move the focus from his deficiencies to the deficiencies of the other people in the story. Because Jesus wasn't telling us something, we're not supposed to apply this guy's situation to our lives. So God tells us to go out, get robbed, beaten, and left for dead. That's what God wants for me. That's not the point. So that we are definitely not going to focus over there. That just seems, to say it respectfully, that seems stupid. If you thought that was the application, we really need to take a minute after church and talk about how you interpret Scripture. This is not the guy we're supposed to be focusing on. The application has to do with the other three people. So I want to move from this guy's deficiencies, what he's lacking, and I want to move it over to the other guys in the story. Here's what all three men have in common. They all have 168 hours in a week, every one of them. They all had the same size God looking out for them. That doesn't change. Same size God, same amount of hours in a week, and they all had the same ability to give. They might not have had the ability to give as much as other people, but they all had the ability to give. Okay? So these are the three things they have in common. 168 hours in a week. If you can figure out how to get more than that, talk to me. I need that too. 168 hours in a week. They have that. Same God. Same God. And they all have the ability to give. Maybe not as much as the other person, but they all have the ability to give. It turns out that these men have all the same things in common with us also. Same things we have. We all have the same God. He has not changed. Same God. We all have the same ability to give and hold and show kindness or withhold it. We can do the same thing. And our weeks are still 168 hours long. We all have the same thing. We're all set up the same way they were. So why did the Samaritan do what he did? And why did the priest and Levite choose to do what they did? That's the question I ask when I read this story. Why did the one choose to do what everybody should have done? And why did the other two choose not to? The answer is that two of them didn't recognize the deficiency, and the other one did. Let me show you what was lacking. It wasn't the deficiency of the man on the road. They recognized a different deficiency. Look at Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 2. This is what was lacking. And walk in love, as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. This is what the Samaritan recognized that the world was in short supply of. We have a deficiency. This is what we're lacking. People had become so caught up with the events of their own lives that they were growing deficient in showing the love of God. They're not showing the love of God. We have a deficiency here for sure. We're missing something. Even the priest and the Levite had been sucked into this mindset. You're a little busy, aren't you? Well, maybe that priest, let's give him some excuses. Let's go ahead and do that. I've heard the excuses. You've heard the excuses. Maybe he was on the way to a festival or a ceremony that he had to do. Maybe he was. Well, that still applies here. There's still a deficiency. You should have stopped. You should have stopped and showed the love of God to this man, and you didn't. That's where the deficiency is. God told us to walk in love. The word walk means to be occupied with. That means it's how we live. We are occupied by walking in love. It's the way we live. God told us to be people who live in love. He told us to be giving and to live in a way that resembles a sweet-smelling aroma to God. I want you to do that, where God looks down and he goes, I am so pleased with the way they're showing my character to other people. I'm seeing them walk in love. The priests were supposed to be the shining light of God, and the Levites were supposed to be God's own people set aside for him. That's who these people were. Well, we have something in common on this level also. We have something in common with the priest and the Levite here. God saved us and sent us out as ambassadors for Christ. So look at this next verse. 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. God rescued us from sin. He called us out of darkness and brought us into the light of his love. You remember that day? You remember when that happened? He brought us out of darkness and into the light of his love. The day that you got saved, you realized your deficiency and you trusted in his solution. That's what happened on the day that you got saved. He brought you into the family of God. He helped you see that salvation is a relationship so that you can reflect that to other people also. He made you priests. In that verse, a royal priesthood. He made you priests. That doesn't mean it's your job to be a priest. It means it's your job to do what the priests did. You reflect the character of God. He gave you that position, a royal priesthood. Then he introduced you to the many promises in his word. He wanted you to know that you could trust him in every circumstance, and he will never, ever abandon you. I will never leave you. So what happened? Why do so many Christians live their life as if God put them here to soak it all up? Maybe you don't like that, but I'm going to say it again because I can tell some of you don't like that. Why do a lot of Christians live as if God put us here to just soak it all up? Why do we feel like, well, God saved me, now we walk around with that mindset, oh, must have, and we just keep applying everything to our lives. Infomercials are our enemy. We need that too. We're just soaking it all up. Why do a lot of Christians live like that? What we need to recognize is that there is a deficiency in Christians who have the outward focus for the cause of Christ. There is a deficiency here. We should be doing this, and we're not seeing it as often as we should be seeing that. We should be recognizing that deficiency. If we truly believe that there is a God in heaven who loves mankind, and we truly believe that hell is awaiting for those who suppress the truth, why are we so inwardly focused? Why? Are we recognizing a deficiency? Do we at least see that there's a deficiency here? It's okay to have things and have money. It's okay. You don't put yourself down if you're rich. And by the way, you're hiding it well. I think I know all of you. I think you're doing a great job. Nobody knows. But don't put yourself down if you have a lot of money, okay? Because having money is not a bad thing. Money is not the root of all evil. That's misquoted. It's the love of money. And it's not just money. It's anything that takes your focus off of God. It's not money. So if you have money, you don't have to put yourself down about that because it's okay to have things and money. The Good Samaritan clearly had those things himself. In this parable, the Good Samaritan had money. Otherwise, he couldn't have been able to help like he did. So he had money, he had possessions. But he had something that far outweighed that. He had compassion for people, and he had a desire to reflect the love of God. He wasn't deficient in this area. That man was not deficient in this area. Last Sunday was Easter, and we celebrated the fact that Jesus was the first fruits of the resurrection. He's the first fruits of the resurrection. Remember, unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains alone. Jesus had to die. And the reason that he had to die is so he didn't remain alone. He wanted you too. He brought you in. He didn't want to remain alone. He wanted to bring us all in and reconcile us to God. I want to show you something that Solomon wrote, reflecting the fact that God was going to give us his first fruits. He gave us his son. And Jesus rose from the grave, the first fruits of the resurrection. I want to show you something Solomon said reflecting that. Look at Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 9. It says, honor the Lord with your possessions and with the first fruits of all your increase. Why do you think Solomon wrote this? Why did Solomon write this? Is it because churches need to be preaching about money? Is that what it is? Hey, you need to be giving God the first fruits of your income. And that's why Solomon gave us his first, so I can tell you, money, money, money. Do we really believe that's why Solomon wrote that? Of course not. Is it so that we should try to earn God's favor by giving our very best? You know, the whole traditional thought, make sure you're wearing your Sunday's best and make sure you give your best to the Lord and make sure you do all these things for God so he will find favor in you. Is that what it's all about? No. It's for the purpose of keeping him in front of your mind. Why the first fruits? Why should I give him of the first fruits? Because you're always focused on him first. First. That's why. It's not so the offering plates are full. Because maybe your first fruits and my first fruits look different. Maybe your first fruits is you get that $1,000 paycheck that you've been hiding from everybody else and we don't even know what's there, or your $10,000 paycheck, or what, you know what it is. I don't, because you've been hiding it so well. But my first fruits might be a dime, or yours might be $10,000. So the idea isn't to make sure the offering plates are full. It's to keep him in mind first. It's give of your first fruits, not talking about an amount here, talking about a focus. That's what we're focusing on. It says to honor him first before you go using everything up on everything else. Think of him first. Consider him first. We even do this in the area of time. Just think about it. We become different people when we're pressed for time, don't we? Yeah, you do. You might be looking at your watch right now. Why is he still talking? Yeah. See how we change a little bit when we're pressed for time? We become different when we're pressed for time. We get stressed out and we end up taking that out on other people because we feel the stress of time. It's because we feel that we're deficient in time. You have the same 168 hours as everybody else. You don't have less time than everybody else. So maybe we aren't deficient on time. Maybe we're careless with time. I sat on my couch and did nothing all day, and now I'm out of time. So now I'm treating you bad because I'm rushed. You didn't have too little time. Maybe you just didn't use it wisely. Look at what Paul says in Ephesians. Ephesians chapter 5 and verse 15. See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Paul tells us to redeem the time because the days are evil. This is the idea of rescuing or ransoming time. Take it back. Take it back because the days are evil. Don't let time pass without redeeming it. Don't allow the week to go by without investing your time in somewhere for the glory of God. It should be used for the glory of God. Redeem it because the days are evil. It's just getting worse and worse and worse out there. You need to take some of that time and you need to redeem it because the days are evil. Teach those children. Love that neighbor. Volunteer for that task. Redeem the time because it's getting bad. The days are evil. So would you go ahead and take some of that 168 hours that you have in the week, and would you go ahead and redeem that and show the character of God through that? Redeem the time. Take it back. Spend it reflecting the character of God. Use it for the purpose of building His kingdom. Do we do that, or are we just so overwhelmed with all the things that we have to do that we give Him very little focus at all? Well, that's why the idea of the first fruits are there. If you would have taken it from the first fruits, you would have already accomplished it. But now you've run out of time and there's no time for God. You've spent all your money and you can't give anything to God and His ministry at all because, well, you used it all up. God says, I want you to take it from the first fruits because that puts me on your mind first. It's not about an amount. It's about a focus. It's about a priority. Think of me first. Consider me first. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. Think about Him first. We have to recognize that there is a deficiency among the children of God. We can make a bigger impact on this world than we are currently making if we focus on the idea of the first fruits. Maybe I should have focused on Him first before I made all these decisions. Now I've got a lot of decisions out there that I shouldn't have made, and now I'm going to God. God, would you please intervene for me? I was way ahead of you. I didn't want to go there. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't ask. You never confronted me first. That's the idea. Consider Him first in your possessions, even in your finances, in the decisions in your life, the choices that you make, even in the time that you have. First fruits. The first fruits. Give it to Him first. Focus on Him first. We need to consider God in the way that we live our lives. Even with our giving, God asks us to consider Him. Even with the money that we put in the offering plate, He asks us to consider Him. Look at 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 6. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. So let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or in necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. God doesn't tell us how much to give here. There's no 10%, 20%. There's nothing here about how much we're supposed to give. The concept of the tithe was an Old Testament law to take care of the Levites. We can see that. That's what it was there for. He now says to give from your heart, not because somebody made you do it and made you feel like it was a necessity. It says not of necessity. I have to do it because, well, God said I had to. No, He doesn't want you to give like that. Not with bitterness because you feel like you must. I have to do it. I just have to. Really upset about it too because God knows I have needs. You're not supposed to give like that. God doesn't say He wants us to give like that. God says He loves a cheerful giver. Well, how do we become one of those? It happens when we see the need and we contribute out of our love for Him. Because we love Him. And we see a deficiency in this world and we'll say, hey, somebody's got to step up. Somebody's got to step up. When you give it out of your love for me and what I'm doing through the ministry. Not because you have a sense of I have to. Because that's not the relationship I want with you. I just want you to give out of love. Time, money, possessions, compassion, all of it. These are all areas where the Good Samaritan rose high above the rest. He rose high above the rest. He recognized the deficiency and he chose to do something about it, and he redeemed the time. He redeemed the time. I'm going to close with this last verse as a reminder of how we should live. Apply it. Just apply it. 2 Corinthians 5 and verse 14. For the love of Christ compels us, because we judge thus, that if one died for all, then all died. And He died for all, that those who live should live no longer for themselves, but for Him who died for them and rose again. Let's love God back. Love Him back. I have it all because He gave it all. And I just want to live out of my love for Him. Let's be the reflection that the other people on this world need to see. Let's be that. Live for Christ. We have everything because He gave everything. Don't forget that. Give God of your first fruits. That means consider him first in everything you do. In everything you do. We live in the goodness of God. Think about your life. Do you have a roof over your head? Yeah, but I'm not happy with it. Do you have a roof over your head? It's got a hole in it. Move to another spot. Do you have a roof in your head, over your head? Yes. Has God blessed you? Yes. Is everything perfection? No. Did he provide for your needs? Yes. But he hasn't given me all my wants. He never said he would. But he did say he would provide for your needs. You live in the goodness of God. We are saved because of the goodness of God. He brought us into his family and made us a royal priesthood, a chosen generation, a special people, because of the goodness of God. He didn't do it because he was really flattered by the way you lived your life. I like that person. They can come into my family. No, it was while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. The reason we are what we are and have what we have is because of the goodness of God. You live in his goodness. And he said, would you please do me one favor? Reflect it. Reflect that. Don't just walk past. Remember, of your possessions, of your money, of your time, your relationships, everything you have in your life, give of your first fruits. Give it to God, of your first fruits. Recognize the deficiency. We all need to take some time and just recognize the deficiency. And it might be something you're going through right now. Maybe there's a deficiency in your own life in this area. Recognize it and let's do something about it.